Sabrina the Animated Series, Episode 33. It starts out with us having to listen to Sabrina's annoying scream as she's falling through the netherworld, even though she could warp home at any point. Salem asks if that was fun, and Hilda says she was so close while sadistically smiling. And Zelda says the bullshit that if Sabrina spends enough time in the netherworld vortex that wouldn't exist without quitting, she'll be able to upgrade in her witch level. Witches wouldn't have levels. I wonder if the task has a way to detect cheating at it, like would be realistic. Like an anti-fear potion. Salem tells a scary monster to take Sabrina instead. They eventually meet an alien who's scared of them. Salem tries to scare him, and Sabrina tells him to cut it off and greets him. I hate that he says he's the boogeyman instead of simply an alien. It's too kiddie. Sabrina asks why he wants to scare people, and he says it's because he wants his dad to respect him. He's scared of things it'd be impossible to be scared of. What lazy writing. He says sometimes he gets this feeling that his dad's watching him somehow, and Sabrina says everyone gets that feeling about their parents, which says something really bad about how bad her family is. But Sabrina's family never spies on her, or else the whole show would be a lot different. Somehow the alien loves the vortex. Doesn't even explain why. Sabrina realizes they could learn from each other to become braver. I just can't get past how forced it is that he's here. Somehow he runs through the wall. And how did he get in Sabrina's locker? How would he know which one it was? He'd need a homing spell. And he isn't a witch. Sabrina shapeshifts him to be a human, which scares him. For the same reason you'd be scared if you were turned to a monster. Somehow he turns back to normal, and he tells her to give him a stronger spell. It's never been explained that her shapeshifting is inherently temporary. If it was that temporary, she'd have failed to resolve the plot of the episode with the evil white cat. It needs to be explained that this is only the case because she used it on this particular alien, and he's just that magical. But it's confusing because he doesn't use magic himself. It's where the gem says Sabrina spelled herself another loser, even though she doesn't know she's a witch. How would she know that she's the reason he's here? It's so lame that the episode's gonna keep having Sabrina need to cast a spell again, because it's such blatant padding. Sabrina tells him when he's alone with her that he has to take the time to get to know something he's scared of to become braver, which is bullshit. He starts running and returning to normal, but wills himself to keep in his human form. Good thing there's no security cameras in the school. Then he runs into a bully. Why is he standing in front of him instead of instantly running away? The principal is somehow here in a Deus Ex Machina to pull the bully away to the science lab when she could have been anywhere else in the school. The boogeyman goes into Sabrina's classroom, and I'm expected to believe the teacher won't wonder why this new student is here. Instead, she says a number, and he gives her the right answer. Somehow, Jem compliments his intelligence, when I expect a cliche story like this to make her hate him for being smart. It feels like it's just happening to teach kids that being smart is good by lying to you. Class gets dismissed early because there's nothing left to cover, so the students cheer. Sabrina explains to him that he wasn't afraid because he knew a lot about math. The bully gets stood up to by Sabrina a little. It's easy for her, he's not allowed to hit her. Why is the alien not running away? Why is nobody reacting to the slime coming from him? Granted, I can give it some leeway because who would ever look at someone's shoes? Sabrina uses obvious magic to send the bully away. And somehow he asks if he did that, and the kids are impressed instead of scared. Somehow none of them saw what really happened, even though some of them would. I guess some of them are impressed because they think he's a witch. The father's annoyed at his cringy, lame catchphrase to shine a light and banish fright. Salem lampshades that soap operas use evil twins too much, like Archie Sonic. And I have to assume the father used a homing in spell to warp to Sabrina's house, as how else would he know what it looks like, let alone where to go? It can't be that he sent him here specifically to scare Sabrina because he's a kid, so there's no way he'd be allowed to have a job. Like, it's not a stereotypical teenager job that hires teenagers. The boogeyman says he never wanted to be a boogeyman. Why did he assume Sabrina didn't already know that? He somehow talks as if he could never become an accountant just because his father would disapprove. Sabrina spends some time trying to talk bravery into him. This is so boring. Jem overhears their conversation and wants to make a social call. It turns out both of his parents are in Sabrina's house arguing, and his mother is on his side, and hopefully quickly suffering. Sabrina inexplicably says this time he won't need anyone's help, even though she didn't want to tell him that she used magic to help him, so he freaks out and returns to normal. Jem somehow thinks that his parents are rich, so she has the right to meet them. She is told to look over there, and the door is slammed on her, and she says she can't believe she fell for that again. She is smarter than that. The story wastes more time on the father pressuring him, and when he tells him what job he really wants, he yells at him and grounds him for 100 years, even though he could leave his house at 18. Hilda says, "And you think we're strict? You are! She better know that." Too bad she doesn't tell her she's strict. Jem tries to get into Sabrina's house with a helicopter, and Sabrina uses magic to send her flying away. I assume this will be a pattern that'll be very entertaining. The father is already running late for his scare appointment. At least the mother thanks Sabrina's family for no reason, like they had a choice in being hosts. The father agrees to let his son say goodbye to his friends, then how is he always a monster? Did he say he's not allowed to have friends? I guess he really doesn't want a baby in the house again, because he could just have another kid if he's that obsessed with his kid having the same job as him. Sabrina expects me to believe that it was wrong of her to help him beat Slugloaf. According to this show, it's wrong to keep someone from getting beaten to death. Somehow the boogeyman laughs at Sabrina for still being scared of the vortex. And why would he be hypocritical? He says he wants to handle the bully on his own when he shows up at Sabrina's house, somehow already aware that he's at her house. He tells her that Slugloaf's afraid of a fair fight, and he turns his head to normal to scare him into falling over. I assume Jem called Slugloaf to tell him where to go. Jem sees some light and screams at seeing the alien's father. She wouldn't ask, "Who are you people?" because she'd recognize his son's voice. She should have been written to say, "I guess I'm dreaming." He says by using modern accounting methods, he could become more efficient. It's amusing that Jem's sitting in bed bored at this. It's so weird that she isn't scared at all after seeing that Sabrina is associated with these aliens. You think eventually she would start to ask why in the world she keeps having these dreams where Sabrina is associated with supernatural stuff and see a therapist. You think she'd at least ask, what kind of nightmare is this? She tells her to explain, and Sabrina tells her this is all a dream. Jem says, "It is?" You'd think she'd have been assuming this was a dream since she saw the monster. She says that in her dreams, she's her maid. So Sabrina magically gives herself a maid outfit which fools her, when it could just as easily be that she's a witch, because she knows the boogeyman. And then she says she's not chickening out of the vortex this time, not that we get to see her succeed in it, because that'd be a waste of time, and time was already wasted in this episode on the boring stuff. Even though we could have just not seen the vortex in the first place, and only seen it at the very end. This boring episode is about an alien inexplicably meeting Sabrina just to force the plot where she constantly teaches them to not be a coward. And this drags on the whole story without the principal or teacher wondering why this new kid who's not on the attendance sheet is here. Until he eventually goes to Jem's room and impresses his father with his accounting skill, getting him to realize that it's not so bad that he doesn't want to follow in his footsteps scaring people like a confusing ripoff of Monsters, Inc. If you're gonna rip it off, you need to explain that they're scaring people to generate electricity, or it's just gonna feel forced. The whole scene with his father disapproving of him was completely pointless. So the moral of the story is that things are less scary when you know a lot about them, and you can always get your father to approve of not following his footsteps by helping him using your talent. Well, those morals don't always apply to the real world. I'm sure that if you were scared of snakes, learning more about those specific ways their poisons make people suffer would only make you even more scared of them. And that's just one example. And a lot of parents would never soften up like his father did. Inexplicably. Most of the time you wouldn't be able to be useful to your parents because of the job you plan on getting. I don't think he was getting braver because of knowledge, but because of Sabrina's emotional support. The episode was boring and the alien sucked to look at. But it's almost good by this show's standards, because it was a story entirely about Sabrina helping someone, and not having it backfire, which should be standard. Why isn't that the show's formula? It still demonizes magic because Sabrina says it was wrong of her to save him from being beaten up. Sabrina the Animated Series, Episode 34. Harvey plays a video game ignoring Sabrina and she unnecessarily taunts him. Too much time is wasted on this. Salem's in her bag. He ends up in a museum with Sabrina because I guess he was bored, and he says in his day he called the moon Planet Kitty Litter, even though witches could just zap away anything to Never Never Land. Sabrina uses magic on Harvey's Game Boy to ruin it, and says the batteries wore out, because she doesn't want him missing the whole trip to the observatory. I never went on a field trip to an observatory. The story really exaggerates Harvey's addiction to gaming. It's clearly written by someone who never played a video game before. Sabrina pulls something to find Quigley's office. Since when is he working in an observatory? He has a top secret project. The search for aliens. They should be a lot more clear on what his job is, because it seems completely unproductive. And we see him broadcast a video of himself, where he hopes the stupid humans won't destroy their planet by then. He could have easily not said this sentence. It comes out of nowhere that he's this cynical about humanity, because usually he's obliviously smiling all the time. By this point he spent so much time in the house that I'd rather think of him as not having a job, because I'm used to that. I still prefer assuming that the household still makes money off the fact that it has witches in it instead, just to spite Quigley's insistence on no magic ever. Sabrina hears laughter and says he'll never be a laughingstock in her eyes. I hate when she feels sorry for him. The writers Harvey say everybody likes Quigley. Screw that. They hear someone say he wants Quigley fired, but Quigley's boss likes him. Well then why even show the scene if there's no actual tension? The guy has horrible acting when he says this institution has to shut him down. This is supposed to be a secret project, so how would he know about it? He'd hear Sabrina say this is horrible and confront her. Why is the show so allergic to just having the characters think instead of talk? Eventually, Sabrina says her uncle isn't excess baggage. How is this writer so stupid? It has to be that he doesn't know anything about the franchise before this point. The whole franchise did without him just fine, and there has to be a reason it abandoned Quigley after the animated series ended. Harvey says Quigley should stand and fall on his own and discourages her from meddling in others' business. It's doubly annoying that Sabrina still makes a mistake despite being told not to. Sabrina tells Salem he owes her for eating her tuna sandwich, so she wants his help. Doesn't mean that much to him. They didn't have to extend magic to just zap it up. She wants to create an alien response to Quigley. I'd assumed from the start that he'd get a response the natural way because we've already seen tons of monsters, which aren't from another planet, so they are aliens. Salem picks up a phone and says love you too because he knows it bugs Spooky. How convenient that Spooky didn't use magic on him from a distance or over the phone. Why the hell aren't they just pointing to instantly create the alien signal? Why would Sabrina say, how would I know what an alien's supposed to look like? She's seen tons of aliens. And somehow Salem messes up and screws up the control panel, which messes up Quigley's video so that it looks like he's threatening to destroy an alien planet. And I'm sure they're gonna totally ignore the cheerful smile he has. I don't want to see the result of this. It's too frustrating. I hate seeing Quigley get popular because of this message. Harvey wants to talk to Sabrina alone because the footage of the approaching aliens looked like his video game aliens. Then her stalker, Jem, somehow is here to overhear her and plot against her. So Jem's uncle proves to people that the aliens are just video game aliens. People would have always known that because they always looked like 8-bit aliens. So I get to see the audience boo Quigley. Sabrina asks Salem how he could let her do something so stupid. Just another way that she's an unsympathetic excuse for a protagonist. Instead of her taking responsibility, she shifts the blame. Salem could have kept her from making a mistake. All of her mistakes, because he's a warlock. And it's shameful that it's presumably too addicted to her adventures to stop her. But she pressured Salem into helping her in the first place. Why doesn't he point that out? There was no reason for them to use the aliens from the game instead of fake aliens. The main characters get kidnapped by aliens, and eventually one tells Quig that they give up so there's no need to destroy their planet. Which is at least a twist, but I guess they're so used to advanced technology they just naturally assume Earth is advanced too. This is so convenient. He's trying to make Quigley their leader. Why don't they immediately believe him when he explains that he was never threatening them? Then the plot would already be over. I'm sure they'd have heard Sabrina say that when Salem spilled coffee it messed up the signal. You'd think it'd have not even sent it then. They would try to open it and it would be a corrupt file. Then he says he's gonna freeze all of them. I'm so confused. Why aren't these witches warping out of here or destroying the tubes? Do they have to have the witches dressed in witch costumes all the time for the writers not to forget? Harvey always assumed that the aliens made Salem able to talk. And he says they could build a whole show out of Salem. Salem recites the end of Spooky's letter, and assumes that Spooky's spell created these aliens. Why doesn't he care that they made the spell happen? Very conveniently, Harvey gets free of the tube in such an easy way that's completely forgettable. And they arbitrarily listen to his advice, and he tells them to fill the balloons with 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, and the other heroes get freed. Then there's a boring sequence where Harvey and Sabrina shoot alien spaceships, and Sabrina's hair resembles Leia. How convenient that they're perfectly fine with killing aliens. The alien spaceship eventually lands on Jem's uncle, who somehow is alive afterwards. An alien asks how they can repay him, and Quigley says he just wants to go home, so they returned home. How convenient that the tractor beam's able to make Harvey forget things. No one told the aliens that Harvey was a mortal who needed his memory erased. Why would Spooky be responsible when he was evil enough to make this spell happen in the first place? It's a miracle it doesn't just make every mortal know about magic, just so they can sit and laugh at the world being in chaos. This episode's about Sabrina arbitrarily trusting Spooky again, this time to make Quigley get respect for contacting alien life, only for it to turn out that the spell made the aliens come to life to kidnap him when no one wanted that. And somehow, instead of Sabrina or Salem just pointing to brainwash the aliens into letting him go, since Sabrina effortlessly brainwashed Quigley in an earlier episode, the pacing drags, and Harvey somehow gets let go, and can convince them to let him pilot a spaceship to shoot invading aliens to death. And is conveniently fine with causing their death just because they're not humans. At least I got to see people get upset with Quigley when the lie was revealed. But it never should have taken more than a second for people to figure it out. And all this was to teach a lesson not to meddle in someone's business. Because somehow, the writer thought "don't help someone ever" was a good message. As usual, the pacing's too slow. And I hate that there was ever an extended part of it where people loved Quigley. What kid is going to be in the kind of position where she could try to make her uncle get more respect? Who needs this message? She could have easily just had actual aliens contact him, so that it wouldn't have to be a lesson about how fooling people is wrong, even though realistically they would never figure out the truth, so why not just make them happy?